Hey guys, I love Spider-Man and I know you do too, but by extension, I also really like Venom. And one of my favorite versions of Venom is the Agent Venom character. So I'm super excited to get the amazing Yamaguchi Agent Venom here. So we're gonna be taking a look at that today. We're gonna be looking at the box, of course. We'll be taking a look at the accessories, articulation, as well as how this compares to the previous articulated versions of the Agent Venom character. So stick around and we're gonna get right into it. Here is our Agent Venom box. And it looks nice. As you can see on the left hand side, we have a nice picture of Agent Venom himself. And on the right side, it's kind of interesting because it's very prominently showing the Revoltech logo, which I'm just not used to. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's just kind of interesting to note. And of course, at the bottom, we have some characters, which I suspect probably just mean Agent Venom. On our right side, we see a few more shots of Agent Venom. On the back side, even more shots, as well as a picture of everything that's included. And finally, on our left side, we have another shot of what Agent Venom looks like, as well as the logo. And from the top side, you can see the Venom logo, and you can see that it's actually a continued picture to the front, which is pretty cool. Here is the bonus head that you get for pre-ordering it. And that only worked through certain vendors, and I searched high and low to find the right one that still had one available for me to purchase. So pretty straightforward. It just came in the box just like that. And here he is out of packaging. So first, let's go over the accessories. And as you can see, we've got this tray of things, and these ones are going to be like tendrils or tentacles or whatever you want to call them, come from the back, as well as these ones. And I'll attach those later on and we'll look at those closer. We have some effects pieces for the guns to show that they're firing. And then finally, we have a blade that's swappable with his hands. So starting from the bottom, you can see that he's got a pair of fists, and these fists have a hole in them for the purpose of attaching the web accessory. And then moving up, we've got two sets of the same set of hands, which are like symbiote hands, because as you can see, they're three-fingered. From there, we have a set of gripping / trigger hands. And then we've got some open reaching hands. And finally, some more kind of venomed out hands, but more for like him as opposed to these symbiote ones. So these ones, like, he could probably attach them to his regular wrists, but I think these are also meant for the tendrils that we'll see later on. And the hands that he comes with by default are also fists, but they also have a hole for the purpose of webbing so that he can hold a web, because he can shoot webs. Then we've got a bunch of guns, but to hold some of the guns, he's got these, and these just peg into his thighs. And even though these are meant to hold the guns, as you can see, they're not really holding a real gun. They're in fact holding one of these guys. So this will peg into here like so. And then from there, you attach it to the side. And as you can see, he actually comes with two sets for each side, even though there's not more than one hole. So this one peg hole is just for this side. And so basically you get two of them for each side, I guess mostly as a backup, which is nice because this is something that I can see that's easy to lose. Once you have your character pulling out his gun, then these are what the guns look like themselves. So he comes with 4 of these total, and they all look exactly the same. And here's how that hilt compares to the full gun itself. And you can see that they are intended to be effectively the same, but because this is supposed to go into the holster, so it's got more detail on the handle, and this one doesn't because it's supposed to be gripping anyway, so you wouldn't see it. What's interesting is that they also give us a set of these pouches, and these can go in place of the gun holsters if you wanted to. So right here's the holster. You would just pull that right off like that, and then you would pop that in like so, and that's it. So if that's what you want to do instead, then you can. And the only other peg hole I could find is this. However, none of them fit into here. I believe this is strictly for use with the stand if you don't use the claw part of the stand. So can't peg into there. And you can't peg into here either, but I don't know why you'd want to peg into any of those back holes since those are for the tendrils. And then here's the biggest gun of the bunch, and this is super cool looking. I have no idea if this is based on a real gun or not. I don't know anything about guns. If you know, let me know down in the comments. I'd really appreciate that. Otherwise, it is a pretty cool looking gun. And then here are a couple of web accessories. So these are exactly the same. So he could be shooting webs from either of his hands. I do have my own webs that I've made, and I have a whole video on that too. but these are still really nice, and I'm glad they include them. These are just some extra pegs, so nothing fancy there. I suspect that this is probably a normal thing that comes with these kinds of figures, which is nice because these kinds of pegs can be kind of fragile, so it's good that they're including extras. This little special piece came with the stand, and from what I gather, this is actually for the head. So these are alternate eyes for this head. So you would pop these eyes off, swap them out with these, and the way you would pop them off is by jamming this on the inside of the head to pop them out. So that way you're not tugging from the outside, because you could definitely snap the peg that the eyepiece has in order to go into the head. You definitely don't want to do that. So it's a pretty basic tool, and I'm glad that they include it. And last but not least, an alternate head. Now, as a reminder, this is an alternate head that only comes if you get it as a pre-order bonus. So these will probably be kind of expensive on the aftermarket, depending on when you're watching this video. So we'll take a closer look at how this looks on the body itself, but here's a straight comparison of the two heads, and I'll do a swap in a little bit just to show you how it really looks. But as you can see, they are very different heads for very different reasons. Now let's take a look at the articulation of the figure, because this is my first amazing Yamaguchi figure. From what I understand about these figures, they are a little exaggerated in some of the proportions. Like, as you can see, the thighs are kind of big. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something to note depending on the style of figures that you like. But starting from the bottom, we have a little bit of ankle swivel because the design of his boot gets in the way. Otherwise, you can go back, but you don't get a lot of going upwards other than your toe articulation. And then our knee articulation is actually not technically a double jointed knee. However, it gives us that type of articulation even without having a double joint. So that's pretty awesome. First time I've seen anything like that. Up to the thigh, it does look like we should have some swivel, and we do. You can see that line break right there. Leg can come up like that. That's a pretty good amount forward. And then coming out for splits, let's take that off. You can come out pretty far out to the side like that too, and that's great. As you notice, the belt is kind of moving, and that's because it actually has its own articulation as well to move it to the side. So that way you can move the belt up a bit in case it's getting in the way of the things that you have going on. And that's a neat touch. I do like that. Otherwise, you just kind of close it in just to, you know, be accurate. And the articulation itself is just kind of like a regular wrist joint. So as you can see, it's a ball, and I don't know how well that comes off, but there's a line right in the middle because that's where the articulation is happening. You can see that the pelvic region is its own separate piece right there. And looking at the waist itself is moving on its own, which is great. And it appears to be on a ball joint because I am able to get it forward a bit. It's hard to distinguish because that's moving too, but it's definitely moving a bit, but it's also a little bit obstructed by the belt. So something to keep in mind. But as you can see, the top portion is moving around just fine. So as you can see, this is as straight as I can make him. And from the side, he is pretty straight as well. Although in a lot of photos, I do see him kind of like hunched over. But if you move too high, then you will see a bit of a gap. So you can't move him too high up. Otherwise, he can move quite a bit down. So this is the upper chest as far forward as I can get it without actually also moving the lower portion of the torso. Coming up to the arms, you can kind of see in there that we have a ball joint, and you can see that you can go the whole way around just fine. The shoulder armor is obviously just part of the arm and not like attached over on this side. So that's nice. We do have a bit of bicep swivel, but the armor and also the body gets in the way just a little bit of that. So something to keep in mind. And since he's on a ball joint, we nearly have fist to shoulder touching articulation. At least it's better than having just like only 90 degree. So that's pretty good. And then our wrist is, unlike the Marvel Legends line, this is kind of a Mezco style, and a lot of other companies use this kind where you peg into the hand rather than the hand pegging into the wrist. Also interesting to note about the articulation of the arms is that, so I don't know if you just caught that, but watch right here and you can see that that moves on its own too. So that's, I don't even know what to call that level of articulation because it's not quite the shoulder, but it kind of is. So you can move that down, and then you can still move the arm like that. So that's pretty cool. Definitely not, you know, like a butterfly joint, but so if you know what to call that kind of articulation, please let me know in the comments. And then coming up to our head, one of the interesting things is that the neck armor bit is this is supposed to just be like armor that's part of the body, but for the figure, it actually moves with his head. So that's not something that happens in the comics because it's just, you know, part of his armor, but that's what we're seeing here. So you can see as I move the head around that moves with it. So it's not necessarily a problem, but it is a little unusual to like think about. Otherwise, the head itself is on a ball joint. However, he can't really look up a whole lot, even with moving the like neck armor. Here he is looking straight, and here's how far up you can get him to look. So he can kind of look just a little bit up diagonally, but not a whole lot. Definitely can't do straight up. And then otherwise, the left right should be okay. But as you can see, like the armor again kind of gets in the way of that level of articulation, because this isn't again supposed to move with it. So that's like awkward looking. So you would want to keep this in place and then move the head. So, and as far as the design itself, it hits all of the major cues that Agent Venom has. He's had several different artists throughout the years drawing the design, but it's still basically there. The Venom logo itself is fairly accurate, besides like the white line here. Usually it's one solid piece, but I'm not gonna knock them for that one. He's got tons of like spiked armor from the shin to the knee to the forearm to the shoulder pads. The neck piece is actually also a very unique kind of design choice for him as well, which is cool. And then of course, like, you know, a belt, because the character is a soldier. So I think they did a pretty good job recreating that soldier look here, since there's no like real definitive version of Agent Venom. So really they can all look good and be accurate and also inaccurate. And this fits right in line with that. Here's how it looks with tendrils attached. You can see two of them over here, and you should be able to see one more right behind here. And so the base part of the tendril are all the same. So you have this part which pegs into the back, and then you've got a joint here, which is a round joint, which is pretty much what's all over the body. And then you peg in one of the other arms. Now there are two types of arms or tendrils that you can attach. One of them is the shorter one, which does have a ball joint right there. And then our second one is a larger one, obviously. And it's conceptually the same idea with the ball joint right here, but otherwise a longer one. And you can see how it looks right here. So I put the shorter one on top right here, and then this was the one with the longer side. And here's how they look with all four of the tendrils attached. I think they're really nice looking and really well executed. As I mentioned earlier, there are alt hands that are kind of intended to be pegged into the tendrils, and this is how they would look, along with holding the guns that they can hold. And specifically, you can see that the alt hands are designed to go with the tendrils because they're the same paint style as the tendrils themselves, whereas his own hands are more intended for the main body. And speaking of the guns, let's take a look at their blast effects. Here's the blast effect itself, and as you can see on the back side, it's supposed to peg just directly into the guns, and all four of them are exactly the same, as you can see there. And there's how it is with all four attached. I am a little bit bummed we don't have a blast effect for the larger weapon as well, because, you know, he's going all out, and that'd be fun to see. And here's how that blade would look attached to the hand where it's supposed to go. And it can go on either side, but I only just put this one on here because I have them gunned out with everything else. And since we've been swapping out parts, let's see how the other eyes look. So here's our head, and here are our alternate eyes. And as I said earlier, this tool is intended to help you get the eyes out. Now, I was unable to use this tool to pop them out, and I think that might just be because they were really in there really good. So something to note in case you need help popping them out, this might break in the process, so I ended up just using a separate metal tool. Otherwise, that's how it looks without the eyes. I'm leaving this eye in so that you can see how the others will compare to it. So starting with the bottom eye, here's how that looks on the head. And it's a good looking eye, and it actually pairs well with this one in the sense of like kind of creating a Deadpool style kind of facial reaction, because since, you know, wearing a mask, you can't actually see the face, so That's cool. And next up is our next eye, which is a little bit bigger than our regular eye. So you can see that that first one was kind of a small, the regular is a medium, and then there is a large size. So, and in case you wanted to see what the biggest eye and the smallest eye look like together, that's how that looks. Here's how the green eyes look. And as you can see, the green eye is basically the regular eye, just painted green, as they're about the same size. And here's how that alternate first edition head also looks on the body. And while it is a good looking head, it's not a particularly like specific head. When he Venoms out in the comic books, it doesn't look like this in particular. It just kind of looks like Venom with the teeth. So still, it does look good and a nice addition to have. And here's how he would look with the webbing attached to the hand specific for the webbing. They just attach right onto the top, just like that. And they shoot out just like that. Pretty cool. Okay, so here's all 3 articulated Agent Venoms that are available as far as I know. I know there was a third-party company attempting to make one a while back, but they didn't get enough pre-orders. So this is what we have. On the left side, we have the Marvel Selects, and then on the right side, we have the Marvel Legends. So this one is actually using the old school Toy Biz ball joints, and I'm not a huge fan of that, but that's what we have. I actually have a video where I show a custom version that I made, and I'm actually still really happy with that one. But now that I have this one, I think that custom's kind of unnecessary. But here's how they look together. You can see that these two scale pretty well. This one doesn't scale very well at all with this one, and this one's really lacking in a lot of other ways too. So even though it actually looks pretty good, I'd say there's a lot of issues with like kind of the quality of the figure itself in terms of articulation and the molding, the plastic. The hand doesn't even grip the gun very well. The strap for the holster doesn't actually stay down either. It's not great in that aspect. Our Legends design is also very dated. This is the one and only Legend that has this particular style of hand, where the hand is actually part of the forearm. And obviously I know there's Agent Anti-Venom, but it's literally the same character. So obviously the ball joints, like I said before, the head sculpt is okay, but I think it could be a lot better as well. I'm really hoping that Hasbro will make a new version of the Agent Venom, but for now, this is what we got. The tendrils on the Legends is okay. It's serviceable. It does what it's supposed to do. And it is neat, at least, that each tendril is supposed to be able to hold a gun. He only comes with the 4, which actually isn't bad either, considering usually most characters only come with the 1 gun, if they come with a gun at all. Like I said, I really like the Agent Venom character, and here is a statue of him that I got a while back. Not a whole lot of similarities, but some, and I'd say more similarities here than even between this guy and the Selects and the Legends figure. If you want to see more Venom stuff, then check out my video right here.